Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the BodySmartPodcast.
And if you have ever struggled with your confidence, maybe imposter syndrome, or feeling like you have to do all of the things, be all the things for all of the people, then this is a must-listen episode today. We have got the amazing Dr Jane Leonard with us. She is a medical doctor working as a GP, and she's also a private cosmetic doctor with clinics up here in the north of England and also in London.
Yes.
And she's a doctor on the Channel 4 TV show Embarrassing Bodies. And podcast host with her own podcast, The Confidence Clinic. So you are one bloody busy woman.
It sounds like that. Thanks so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
Yeah, it's amazing that you could fit us in because I'm literally reading through all of the stuff that you do. I was like, how do you have time for all of this stuff? It's amazing. And I know one of the things that you are conscious about and wanting to talk about is how like women do take on all of that stuff and feel like we have to be everything for everyone. How do you manage that?
I think that's a really good point, actually. I think it sounds like loads, doesn't it, that like list? I think by now I've kind of got it in a little routine of what I'm doing. But yeah, essentially taking on too much and trying to do too much is something that I've definitely been guilty of over the years. And I think it kind of, in some ways, goes with the territory. So when you're doing a medical student and then you're doing your post-grad training, so like your GP training, things like that, that was a time in my life where I probably did take on other things. I did my aesthetics training at the same time and really tried to cobble together the starts of what is now probably my main job. And I often look back and think, you know, is there other ways of doing that maybe weren't as full on? But I think the truth is that one of the best things about having a job like I did doing the GP work is that you're maintaining all your medical skills and then leaning into something that is not, it doesn't have to be, 'cause it's unregulated in the UK at the moment, sort of medically led, but it is. So those two things do marry up really well. So it meant that I could be a GP, do all my training, and then start developing my skills in something that was actually brand new. But the truth is, it is a lot. And I think consistency and discipline of doing those two things at times do take the toll. And I think looking back, like, I'm really glad that I did it. And I think I've definitely suffered from burnout and things where you do take on a lot. But it's, I suppose now I feel reaping the rewards of that, because I can kind of take my foot off the gas a little bit, that allows me to do different stuff like my own podcast and things like that. So the list sounds long, but the way they all slot in together, I've kind of worked out how to kind of get it into a rhythm that works.
Yeah. And with that around like fitting it all together, like you said, they do complement each other, but it's still like a big demand in terms of hours of your day. So what does your typical routine look like to fit everything in?
I think so. The main thing to say, like with the TV work, so Embarrassing Bodies, you tend to do that in a block.
Okay.
So when that's happening, the other two things kind
For
of
anyone who's listening and doesn't know what Embarrassing Bodies is, could you explain?
Yeah, so Embarrassing Bodies is a TV show that has actually been on the telly for, I think we did the 9th season. So the 8 seasons before that, there was 3 doctors, so I'm fortunate enough to be one of the new doctors leading it forward now. But Embarrassing Bodies, the main thing about it is breaking down barriers to consultation. So the reasons why people don't go to see their GP, and the number one reason for that is being embarrassed. So we're sort of sharing cases of patients that have things that are deemed to be embarrassed or they feel embarrassed about. And you'd be surprised about how much variation there is in that. Some things that people aren't bothered about at all is the most embarrassing, sort of scary thing to another. So it's sharing cases that us doctors see all the time that we're not embarrassed about, yet people at home, it's stopping them from seeing a doctor. And the truth is that, you know, embarrassment is one thing, but obviously if you're worrying about something, the anxiety related to that can be terrible too. And the truth is you do need to get seen either way. So that's the main message, that trying to push forward, that we're not embarrassed. These are things that people don't necessarily talk about all the time, but they certainly are still happening. And it could be something that your worry could be dissolved in a second by seeing somebody and told, look, it's nothing to worry about. Or in fact, it could be something that potentially is something more worrying, and acting quicker is the best way to get, you know, the best outcome.
Yeah. Is there a common theme there? Is it anything to do with like sexual health or certain body parts, or like is there a theme that stops people?
I think on the show, because we need to have things that people I suppose can see a lot of the time. I think it tended to be more with me, was dealing with more skin related things, and they were all in different body parts. So anything like from acne on the face, the condition the foot. I saw a lady that had this rare skin condition that unfortunately for her affected her vagina. So there's different things that obviously, you know, these things can affect. So the themes have been definitely on the relaunch of the new season we worked on have been really very variable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this relaunch of the show came about actually on the back of COVID. So obviously for all that time when the pandemic was around, the main focus was on COVID and a lot of everything else took a back seat. So as that was resolving and life was returning to normal, that seems to be the perfect time to relaunch the show to kind of say, look, we all know about COVID. We focused on it for the last 3 years, but actually, you know, you still need to be checking your breasts. You still need to be having your smears. You still need to go for sexual health checks. You still need to address your mental health. And it was bringing the other things to the forefront that actually COVID was number one and all this lot have been forgotten about.
You know, it's an emotionally demanding job for you. You're seeing these people who are coming with all these problems in 10-minute slots, just one after the other, after the other, after the other. How do you deal with taking all of that on?
I think one thing to say actually is because I do all these different jobs, I only work part of my time doing GP work, and I think that allows me to kind of not feel as overwhelmed by it. So I couldn't really speak for somebody who's doing it as a full-time job, because the last couple of years of me practicing, like say, to fit in all the other things I'm doing, I've kind of just done it as a dual career. But that said, particularly after COVID, where people do a lot of like phone consultations, I always insist on seeing the patient. So I am actually seeing them when I'm doing that job in that way. I think you just go into the day knowing it's going to be like that. And I think you just have to remain with that element of that you're a human as well, and you can do your best. And it's also just prioritising the patients, the problems, and yourself, and ultimately just being safe. Just don't take a risk on somebody. If somebody comes in, they've got what I always say, okay, what are you here for? I'm like, I've got a breast lump, I've got chest pain, I've got a rash on my foot. Well, forget the rash on your foot, tell me about, you know, so it's just, there's a lot of stuff like that. But I think it's, again, from our side, just being open for what the day's going to be like, knowing there's limitations to what you can do, but the main priority for everyone is to be safe.
So would you say for you, being able to manage it is because you have these different kind of compartments of your life where you're not all in one thing?
Totally. I wouldn't be able to do it, Stacey, full time, I don't think.
Yeah.
It'd be really, really hard.
And is that, do you think, just because of the job itself, or do you think that's like any job?
I think any job. I mean, I say that wrong. I wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, that it's an amazing job, right? It is an amazing job. It's a privilege to be able to do it and to be trained in it. But obviously it can take its toll in different ways. So as long as that you're managing that, they're the main things. I think for me now, because of working in having my aesthetics practice, which again is like running a business, and also then doing TV things and things like this, I've got to look after myself to be on form, to be able to keep on the ball with it all. So I think from my side, given the style of job that I'm doing and kind of the lifestyle I've chosen, I have to make sure I'm fit for purpose to do that. Yeah. But I think it's certainly come to, like my sister's a paediatrician. She does that pretty much full time in the hospital. I'm like, I do not know how she does that.
Wow.
Because that's like not just the patient, the patient's the kid, it's the mum, the dad, at the school, like that's, you know, all encompassing. Yeah.
I love that your sister's also in medicine, because I know our researcher Jess said that when you went to uni, it was a bit of like a first in the family type thing. So she obviously was inspired by you.
We both did it.
So what made you decide to go down that path?
I think, looking back on it now, I think it was just my dad. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was always quite good at science and enjoyed doing that. And I was really, at the time, I was a really keen horse rider, and I wanted to do this niche thing of being a physiotherapist for horses.
Oh, cool.
Which is very, very niche.
It's very niche,
Very niche. And in order to do that, you have to be a normal physio. So I went to do lots of work experience that my dad arranged, because at the time he was working, my dad's like a scientist himself, and he was working in Risington Hospital, where they do all the knee replacements, working on the biomechanics of all these knee joints, etc. So he knows loads of physios. So he got me in doing some work experience in that field. And then at the end of it, when it came to doing my UCAS form, I was like, Dad, I don't really want to do it. And it took me, like, obviously I told him on the day, the last minute, where I had to like put the form in. I was like, too scared to tell him after he'd done all this effort for me. I was like, I actually don't like it. I don't want to do it. And he was like, right, well, just do medicine. And I was like, I don't want to do that either. And he was like, no. He's like, well, get into that if you can, because it's still the same thing. It's an amazing thing to do. And then, you know, take it from there. So that's kind of what happened.
That's a really brave thing to do, though, isn't it? Because I have the pressure of like pleasing my parents as well. It's just like inborn in me to be able to have the conviction to say, actually.
Yeah, I there's so many opportunities for me to go, I didn't like that. I just was like, I think, you know, at that time, you're so young, aren't you, making these big decisions? Yeah. So I kind of just was going on with everything day by day, and then all of a sudden it's like, right, let's get this form completed. So obviously I'm so grateful for that, and like that's what I mean. It was I probably wouldn't have thought of it other for that.
Yeah. So when you're saying about your career now, you're managing multiple different sides of it.
Yeah.
Do you find that because you are doing multiple parts of like different careers that you have more energy for each one because it's like it's a different like day?
Like they say, a change is as good as a rest, don't they? I don't know if that's
true. But yeah, like I think when like a lot of doctors have been interviewed in the past, they've said like, would you still practice medicine like if you won the lottery? And like a lot of them answered like no, or some of them answered maybe part-time.
Yeah.
And the part-time part was as like they do enjoy helping and serving people, but maybe there's a financial aspect to it, or maybe just a change needed for how draining it could be.
I definitely agree with that, Jamie. I think that's a setup. Like when you reel off what I'm doing, it sounds like, God, that's too much, but they're all different segments of different things that all are interlinked. And I think, like I was saying before, it's not going, I couldn't possibly do that for full time. I just mean that it would be a lot to do that for me personally. I just couldn't. Yeah. But that's just my personal choice and the way that, like, I'm now doing other things that I potentially like as much, actually better. Yeah. So that's why I've got those different kind of career arms. But like it's one of those things again. I think it's more of a vocation than a job. Yeah. You know what I mean? You don't go into medicine for the money.
Yeah.
So, well, not in this country.
Not in this country. No. Yeah. But yeah.
So what point did you, because you had to go obviously through medical school and being a junior doctor and all that's very full on and demanding. At what point did you then get to almost that watershed moment again with where you were on that UCAS form and saying, actually don't want to do this full time?
That's interesting. It kind of was like that. I think I'd completed medical school and then I did what loads of like UK doctors do. They go off to Australia for a couple of years. So I went over there and I was working actually in like a trauma centre. I got an amazing job. This is not promoting leaving things to the last minute, but I left the 5 years. Basically, I hadn't sorted out somewhere to work over there, but I hadn't got a job here either. And that's probably because I've been at university for 6 years, I've got you how to like sort those things out. So last minute, I've got a space at this amazing trauma centre in the centre of Melbourne, a place called the Alfred. And this was just such an amazing, privileged place to work at. Like, it was fantastic. It was like helicopters on the roof, like proper ER style. And because it was such a massive centre of excellence, they had a dermatology massive centre in there related to melanoma, and I did a lot of dermatology research. So I was doing my job as a junior doctor, but I kind of took the opportunity just because I was interested in it. It was a sort of place that like everything was happening there. So it weren't work I was getting paid for, but I was just like being someone new in a new country, meeting new people, getting involved with it all, having this sort of hub where I was at. Because all my friends were kind of in the sticks, just planning trips for a night out to Sydney, but the rest of the time working in some crazy like place in the outback where I was like in the middle of it. So that got me, introduced me to dermatology. And again, because the system is different there, the link between the sort of cosmetic aesthetic sector within dermatology and skincare is way more of a sort of integrated practice than what it is here. So then when I returned to the UK after being there for about 18 months, I actually started core medical training to be a dermatologist. That's the end of it. So there's different arms like core surgical training, core medical training, GP. And then when I started doing it, I was like, because it's basically all the mad nights and on calls and MAUs and I was like, I don't really know if I want to do this. So I left. And again, that was quite an unheard of thing to do because the places are really hard to get. And so again, I found myself like, I don't actually have a job or anything now, and I've just like left it. So I went to do some Botox training. So I did that, and also then realising you just get one, you do a course for one day, it doesn't by any means mean that you're anywhere equipped to go and inject people in the face. But that's what it is. Wow. So I did that, and then realised, look, that's not going to be my future. I need to do other things. So I did applied to do GP training, and because I'd got the Botox one-day training course under my belt and the background that I'd learnt in Melbourne, I was like, right, I've got to kind of put the effort in to keep this going because GP leans really well into it. And the training, not that it's not as intense, it is, but just in a different way. So it meant that I wasn't doing all those big long nights and weekends. And in that time is when I was started seeing my aesthetics patients. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how it all came together.
It sounds like you've got a really good sense of like your inner compass of, is this actually making me happy? Whereas a lot of people will just chug along on the same path, just kind of okay. And that would have been fine.
Yeah. You're right, Stacey, but I think it was more because of the nature of the job that I'm doing and what's at stake with the job. Like, if you was doing something I didn't really like it and I wasn't that bothered, and I was like, all that's going to happen is I'm going to make a mistake and just piss off a colleague. In that world, if you do something wrong and you're not on the ball and you're not doing it, there's way bigger implications on people's lives.
Yeah.
So think if I'm not up for it and I'm not liking it and I'm not in the zone with it, can't do it.
Do you think people I agree with what Stacey was saying? It does sound like you've got this like North Star sort of compass of, well, this doesn't align with me, so I'm going to say no. Like most people would say yes in those sort of situations, and I get that. Like the fact that like Steph gets in hospital or get like never events, which is basically like an email that goes out to everyone like this should never happen again. When something really bad happens, someone's gone blind or someone's died, and it happens more frequently than you would like to imagine. So like I completely understand the stress and the pressure that it comes of, but like why? I mean, where do you think that's come from to just have that North Star of be like, oh, this?
I don't know actually if it just comes from because I'm doing something that isn't in my family, so there's nobody in my world that I'd look to for guidance on this. Like, you know what I mean? If my family were GPs and they'd gone through a difficult time or something and in the end I've now got a practice set up and they're, loving life in that way, or they've gone through this or did the core medical training, ended up doing the dermatology thing and they've already got a practice I can work in, so I've just got to get there. I don't have that. So I think that was why.
So there's no role model for you to kind of just aspire to,
or just things that if you see somebody doing something that you're doing and have a path to follow that inspires you but also reassures you. Didn't really have that, so I think that's why I made more decisions independently, I think. But again, like the good thing about it is that the diversity of the job and learning the skills as a GP, that's the brilliant thing about it. I still work in quite generalised, so now if I go back into it, I'm not in something that I'm very specifically stuck in something as. There's many different elements of it.
Yeah, it leaves a lot of doors open for you, doesn't it? So if you have another moment,
you
can open another door.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know you told Jess when you guys had a chat last week that you had also got to a point where you burnt yourself out a little bit. Where did that come in this whole journey?
I think that was when I moved to London. So I'd lived up north for most of my life, and when I came back from Melbourne, my GP training was in London. And I think, like I was describing, I went through that change, that quite taxing decision about leaving core medical training, then going through the high pressure change into doing GP work. And then the job, you kind of rotate every 3 to 6 months in different things. So from pediatrics to mental health to gynecology to I did public health, because you need to know a little bit about everything essentially. So I was doing that, and then in a new city, and then doing the aesthetics. I think just a combination of doing everything, but the way nothing of all those things was kind of streamlined or I'd kind of mastered. You know what I mean? There were all things that were all new things. So now, because I'm more like, I'm a GP, so I've got that. I've already achieved the thing I needed to achieve, and then my clinics are doing well because I've learned the thing over like 10 years. So all of these things I've kind of got the experience in and then the confidence in, whereas then I didn't. So I was doing everything as a real beginner and being a beginner in everything at the same time in a new city, trying to make new friends, trying to sort out what you live in. Everything was a bit much.
Yeah.
So I think it was a circumstantial thing and a timing thing rather than, I've made a mistake and put too much on myself. I think it was just the way everything happened. But, in retrospect and reflecting on, there's not the way that it kind of unfolded was it for the best in the end.
Yeah, I mean, burnout never sounds fun, does it, to anyone? But it's, it's character building as well sometimes, especially when you're younger. Going through that, it's like you're basically pushing your limits of like how far can you take things before it does become too much. Obviously, there's extremes of of everything, but like getting burnt out, I think a lot of the times the things that you're talking about there, like if you're a beginner in something or you've got like new skills to learn, and then over time it gets easier and then you become more confident. It's like you shouldn't expect to be confident in the beginning because you haven't got the evidence behind you to say that you should be confident.
That's an amazing point, I think, Jamie, because all of those things, you know, going into being a beginner at stuff, like, because I've done all that, I'm not frightened at it again. So if I was starting something new again, like me starting my own podcast or doing that TV show for the first time, yeah, there's slightly different things in the skill set that you need for it and all those things, but actually not being frightened to fail and starting over again and being receptive to learning about things to make it work, I am confident that I can do, because like you say, I've got that evidence behind me that of making difficult choices and putting yourself and doing the graft in times that it was hard. You've succeeded at, even though it wasn't easy at the time.
Do you think it's also helped you readjust your expectations? Maybe the first time around you went into everything being like, I have to nail this. I have to be good at everything. I have to make all the friends and be amazing at work and all of that stuff.
It was funny actually, because when I moved to London, I only knew one person down here. She was working with another GP trainee who's now one of my best friends, who got a really successful cosmetic company. So I got to London at the time, like literally had zero money, and was not with the GP training thing I was doing these rotations where you didn't get paid that much, and I was like, God, like it's so expensive here, and like how's it going to work? I was like, I know, I'll just start doing a few of these Botox people, easy, no problem. So I get the number of Davina to ring her up, and she's like, what? She's like literally going, this is a very saturated business. I don't know, you can't just rock up and just start doing it. And like, if you know her, that's the way that she kind of speaks, with that sort of brutal realness. But when you look back at it, I laughed myself going, that's so funny that I thought I'd just say, so you can just like let me know how, you know, you got some of these people, and you know, where you do all your Botox and that, and like, you know, that's what I'm going to do. It's like, no, you need to get a clinic, you need to get all the stuff you need to. But I think part of me being that naive, it helps sometimes. I don't know, because I
think so, yeah. And I think anytime you start on anything new, having more of an abundance mindset where you're just like, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like if you're like, oh, I need to make more money, I'll find a way of making more money. Or, you know, you just have that.
It's totally like that.
Yeah. And then I think anytime you start anything new, especially business wise, there's definitely got to be a level of like just naivety, but like optimistically naive.
Yeah.
Or is it naivety, or is it not letting your pessimistic brain take over?
Well, that's just like so normal, isn't it? That like people like focus on the negatives more than the positives. And like if you start anything new, everyone will always tell you the things that could go wrong, not the things that could go right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you've got everyone else, your family, your friends, your peers, all in your ear saying like you shouldn't do this. So I think sometimes probably just being naive and jumping in with 2 feet. Because I think sometimes when you start some stuff, you don't even realize how hard it's going to be until you're in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like I don't think you would start if you knew, but the fact that you just were like, oh, that seemed like a good idea, and then just commit.
Yeah,
that's so true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, and then once you've kind of got a bit far into it, you're like, oh, well, I'm in it now, but like you realize how hard it is. But then through the process of that, you know, you develop that sort of like tenacity.
Talking from personal experience over there. And like, what was burnout actually like for you? Because it is a term that seems to be more common now, and people are okay to talk about it, whereas maybe a few years ago people wouldn't really want to share.
I think it was just the key symptoms of it. I suppose I think it's just that thing of like, you know, you're not excited to get up to do this job in the morning. Everything is getting on top of you. I think it was like not having any clarity about what you're supposed to do, and then you're easily distracted. I think, again, they're all symptoms that are inevitable when you've kind of, again, got like all these tabs open in your brain, haven't you, all the different things so they were supposed to be doing, and then you just don't have the energy or the motivation or discipline to be consistent. So, but I think, like, again, one thing about burnout, the positive of it is it makes you stop. Your body makes you stop, and then you just reflect on it, recalibrate it, and look for ways to make a work.
Yeah, that's definitely been my experience of it. It's literally your body is like, enough.
Yeah, it's just like, and then all of a sudden the only thing I felt like was like, God, go. Well, I don't want to feel like this. And then thinking you're always going to feel like it, and then as things change, it starts to lift, and then you're back to yourself again.
So what kind of physical symptoms did you experience, or was it more that like mindset?
Yeah, I think it's just more mindset and just just tiredness, I suppose, and just not really like. I think I used to be somebody that say I'd have a to-do list of the day, and it would include like everything from getting up, do 6 a.m. Barry's boot camp, then this thing, then that, and run around and get your blow dry and all that lot, and then the day would flow, and I'd tick it off one way or the other, and I just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's sort of like symptoms of depression, I suppose. Like, I'm just like, I booked that Barry's class. I'm not even bothered how much they charge me. I'm not going. Or like, whatever, but really not care.
Yeah.
Like, not just like, oh, I'm a bit tired, or I'll go a bit later on, and then somehow I'd make myself go later on. I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah. And do you think part of it was not just trying to meet all these expectations, but it's also not really knowing where you were headed in life? Like
Exactly that, because I was like, why am I doing it anyway?
Yeah.
Suddenly before, I was like, I need to get really fixed. I want to be doing that. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to see my friends that were there. And then I wanted to get into the clinic and do this. And I wanted to make sure I look really good for this thing. It's those kind of links, the reasons your why for doing it kind of drifts away. And you lose it in this path of just mindlessly doing things.
Yeah, you just go into an autopilot.
Yeah.
It's, I bring this up all the time. Brendan Burchard's high performance habits. The main thing he talks about in this is having high levels of clarity. And it's like without having high levels of clarity, it's almost impossible to have high levels of necessity. So it's just like if you're chasing like your health and fitness goals, or you're chasing a career, unless you're like absolutely clear on like where you want to go with your career, where you want to go with your life, where you want to go with your health and fitness goals, if you don't actually have a clear plan and you understand why you're clear on that plan, it almost becomes like an impossible feat to drive the levels of necessity up to start taking the actions towards them. And that's like, you just see that across the board. Like you can kind of be like, oh, that's a nice goal. Well, I'd like to have that. I mean, but if you actually go levels deeper and try to understand, well, why do you want that career?
Yeah.
Why do you want that body? Why do you want to look that certain way? And if it's actually just really superficial, or you've just heard other people say it, then it's kind of like, meh. And then as soon as it gets hard, you're like, why am I doing this? And you makes you literally question your reality. And if you've dug yourself so far deep, it can be really difficult to go like, well, I'm like really in now, and that's where I think you can start to reach those levels of burnout.
And I think it's when it's like you start noticing, like you say, all the hard things. One thing's hard, everything's hard. It's like when you're running on autopilot and you're loving doing that to-do list. You don't care about getting up at 5:30 and doing that. You don't care doing the thing. But then when you're losing the drive for it and the reasons why and the purpose and the intention of it, then you kind of see the negatives, or they're the things that give you, the reason why you're making the excuse not to do it.
I think you shared on stories yesterday about Ikigai. I can't say it. Can you say
Ikigai.
it?
Ikigai. Yeah, I mean, Sai can probably pull it up. It's a Japanese philosophy, and there's another word called Kaizen. There's a bunch of Japanese philosophies that like I think we very much embody at Body Smart and a lot of what we do. But it's Kaizen is like the like getting 1% better every day. They're always looking for continuous improvement. Yeah. But then Ikigai is very much about
Ikigai.
There you go. Ikigai. So it's basically what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. And that is your passion, your mission, your vocation, and your profession. And it's Ikigai, so I definitely said it wrong on stories.
We know what you meant.
But I think that when you were saying about when you're working towards something, you're doing all this work and it just doesn't light you up, that is what's missing. And that's definitely been a pattern in my life. So when I've just always had this pressure to be successful, whatever that means. And so I'd get a job and I'd be like, yes, this is amazing. I'm doing really well, get promoted. And then like absolutely burn myself out working really hard at that job. I had no passion in it. Like I've sold palettes before. I've sold goggles before. I literally, both those jobs, one day just got to a point, just phoned my boss. I was like, I'm out. No. Yeah. I tried to do it to Jamie. Jamie didn't let me. But it's different because I do actually love this job. I do. Yeah. But it is, when you lay it out, you're like, of course it makes sense. Like you're putting all of your time, your effort, your energy into something that you're like, why am I doing this?
And I think the key thing about that is taking the time to do that, because like I'm going through a bit of a rebrand now with the aesthetic side of work, and because I spent so much time working in the business rather than on it, or however they like to phrase it. But I think that applies to everything we just discussed, that unless something happens for you to take the time to think, otherwise all those tasks that you're doing are disengaging your brain from the reason why you're doing it, because you're just doing the task that you're doing. So just doing that, and then you get engulfed in the day. And when particularly London life is a perfect example of that, like everything is a task, like getting on the bloody tube, picking all your bags. By the time your bags I've got to carry around to complete all these tasks, like even that in itself, well, you've seen me turn up today, that proves my point. Like you're just like a crazy person doing that, and then all of that, you just engage with the task of the day, and there's 10 of them. And then by the time you get home, you're like, right, that's it, God, jump into bed. So you never have that moment to go, why the hell am I doing that? Or what? Or was that worth it? Or did I actually like doing that? Or I never thought of that like that before. And I think the key, to move forward is just being that more mindful about why you're doing the stuff. But I've only got the luxury of the time now, maybe because I did all that and killed me in that way to sort of...
I mean, COVID was a giant reset for a lot of people. You know, in terms of like gave them that space, like the amount of people that like quit jobs or moved careers or just had a huge left partners or found new partners, you know, it was a huge change in COVID because I think it did give people that time to like breathe and just reset and rethink and be like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? I've been doing this career for 5 years, or I've been doing this work for 5 years, and I don't actually enjoy it. So no, I think it's important. I think a lot of people though are like, there's so much that this is, I don't know how deep you want to go with all this, but like so much we're just programmed from when we're just kids, and you just kind of go on autopilot from like what your parents teach you and the environment that you're in, and then you go to school and then you're taught everything there and you're expected to go to college or university and then get a career. And then sometimes I think people can get to like 25 and then it's like, what's happened? How am I here? Or why am I on this path? And it's actually a path that you've been taken down because that's the path your parents want you to go down, that not necessarily you want to go down. And I think that's where you can really get into that autopilot, and people can maybe want to have a shift or a change in career. But it's never been easier to shift or change as well, which is one thing too.
I think that's a really good point. Again, that I think sometimes we focus on, you know, the negatives of what like you can have. You can basically be stuck in your life, but sometimes that's the transition, the catalyst to make the change that you need to do to be happy, to get healthier, to get a better job, or not necessarily a better job, a job that makes you happy and, you know, makes you want to get out of bed in the morning rather than resenting things.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick ask. If you are enjoying today's episode, then please do give us a follow just to make sure you get every episode and we can keep cutting the BS and helping you hit your goals.
Have you got, so we've tried to break this down a couple of times, haven't we, in terms of a lot of times that the thing that forces change is like massive pain or like burnout or enough is enough. You know, like people have to like it, like if it's just okay, like if it's in the middle, it's not that bad. Whether it's like your partner or like your body or your health or your energy, you kind of just put up with it. You know, it's like more like better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Totally.
But then when things get really bad, it's kind of like it forces change. And in the time, that can feel like the worst thing that's ever happened to you. But then sometimes when you look back a couple of years later, you can be like, wow, the worst thing that ever happened to me was actually the best thing that ever happened to me because it forced me to change trajectory. So my thing has always been, that's obviously a really shitty, painful thing for people to go through. Is there ever a way, or have you got any advice, is there any way that people can maybe try and force that change before getting basically to rock bottom?
Yeah, I think that... It's a good question because I think the truth is I think it depends on each person and what they're actually like. We all vary, don't we, in I suppose how much we can put up with, how resilient we are, and that's obviously been moulded on the experiences that we've had. So I'd say I think it depends on the direction that's forcing the change, and I think health is a really important one because I think everything boils down to health at the end of the day, for your ability to do all the things that we're doing. So I think sort of advice that is kind of a weird lateral link that I'm pulling from it, but when people look at the life that they've got in terms of them as a human body functioning under the pressure they're under or the life that they're in, they can't do anything without the health. So when all these things are affecting the health, and I think it's better to try and obviously remain well when things get that bad that, you know, you become unwell and then you can't do these things. So I think if anything, to stop you getting to burnout or having mental health problems or things that, or just generally in your life where you're forced to make, you know, I need to leave that partner or I need to change that job, is looking at how it's affecting you. And the core things that often these roads lead back is to your health on many levels, you know, your mental well-being, your physical health, and looking after that and really feeling how you feel within your nervous system or how well you're sleeping or how well you're like, I don't know, what your appetite's like or what your weight's like as an influence of your environment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. So everything that you just said there, I could be like, yeah, I know when I'm pushing here or I'm pulling there, I can notice where like, oh, I'm really stressed, my appetite's gone. So I'll almost like force myself to eat and I need to like maybe address that. Or if there's like other parts that's going on, like I'm not sleeping much, I'm working too late, I'm dreaming about work. There's all these different things that I'm possibly doing. And I know I'm very aware because I can see the knock-on effect it has on my body and then my energy levels and my cognition. So, and I feel like I'm really self-aware, but I would say most people or not, you know, like the way, and
Yeah.
maybe as like health professionals, where maybe kind of like blissfully, like most people aren't that in tune with the body. Like I know if I've like eaten something or something's not right, I can just tell them like my temperature's up, or I can, I feel like.
Yeah, but there's also a bit of denial, because I would say I'm quite self-aware as well. But one of the things when I was really struggling with postnatal depression, and the therapist said to me, you are really good at go, 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 and ignore, like the stuff's still happening, but ignore, because you have to be able to complete the task. Yeah. And like all the pressure, whether it's a job, whether it's a baby, whatever, that's more important to you than listening to your body. And so I think for a lot of people, you know it's there, but you're like, that's not as important as me getting this task done or feeding this baby or completing this project. And I'll deal with that once this is done. And I think sometimes it comes down to self-compassion in that sense, rather than awareness. It's like you have to let yourself be up the list as well, not just whatever you're working on.
It's tough, isn't it? It's because you're just like, well, it'll just be another day, or it'll just be another week, or it'll just be another month, and then that project will be done, or this will be over, or something will change. But yeah, I think your body knows what's going on before you do most of the time. And
it's funny as well, because it's like, I think when you're busy, you've got this mad to-do list, or you're just like so absorbed in whatever that task is. I think the truth is, when you do stop, maybe it brings to the surface, in that quiet, in that silence of stopping, things that you maybe don't want to address.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you not getting on with your partner, or knowing maybe the relationship ended. I've definitely been in that situation like years before. And you just keep on doing your routine of what you're doing. Because me stopping and ask the question, are you happy in that? I don't want to deal with right now. So I'm not going to. So I'm going to just keep on racing around like a crazy person until something makes me change.
Yeah, like that distraction is really serving you in some ways.
In some way,
Yeah, and so you keep going for longer than you probably should. That's a really good point. And it ties in actually a little bit with the confidence thing, because we've managed to talk for ages. We haven't even talked about your podcast being called The Confidence Clinic, which is obviously a big passion of yours.
Yeah.
And when we don't even know like what we're doing or why, or not even listening to our inner selves, confidence is so hard. Like, did you find that you started doubting yourself when you had that burnout?
Yeah, I did definitely. And I think the Confidence Clinic came around really for many reasons, but like Jamie was describing before, is a key thing about what the actual stories that we're sharing on the podcast are about, is that many things to you happen in life, like in my case, burnout or anything really that you deem to be negative or failure or not going to plan or not as you envisioned it or imagined it. But actually all those things serve us in a better way than just success purely on its own. Sometimes, you know, having some bumps in the road or twists and turns in what you're meant to be doing either teaches you something or redirects you into a different path that, you know, the beauty of looking back on things and reflecting, actually you see clearly, oh, now I get it why that happened that way. And then it builds on this idea of this bank of evidence that builds your confidence, that, you know, I know that put under pressure, I'm resilient, so I'll find a way and I'm not frightened of that. Whereas if I didn't have all these things happening and going on, and I also know my limits better now, I'll just go, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's fine, because I know actually I won't enjoy that, or I've done that before, and I know it's not going to be as I thought. So it's very much that Confidence Clinic idea was kind of born out of that way, that, you know, sharing stories of challenges and, you know, events that haven't been the perfect outcome at the time have indeed become the perfect outcome in a different way.
I think it's Alex Hormozy, he shared this as a sort of quote, and he's like, we don't build confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror or whatever else everyone else says. You build confidence by having an unstackable amount of evidence, or an undeniable amount of evidence that you are who you say you are. So it's like, and I think that in everything that I now feel confident in, I only feel confident because I've got years behind me to say like, oh, I can do that, and I can do that well and proficiently, and I've got years of evidence to say otherwise. So I don't doubt that I can't do it because I have done it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, and that's where it comes from. But I think that's where a lot of people, you know, some people just want to be confident in something or like expect to be, but then like why would you be if you're like so new to it or haven't even tried, instead of maybe just like embracing being a beginner and embracing failing.
And I think a lot of it is about trusting yourself. So you do these, it's a little things that all add up, I think. Like, again, using that analogy of like setting this big task list, which at the start of the day is impossible. If I'm going to bed, like after 12, I'm not going to get up at 5 and go and do a Barry's boot camp at 6, or not wanting to do it. You know what I mean? Well, I'm certainly not. So it's actually putting in place now where I'm doing things that fit in with things that I can achieve. So all the little bits, I am going to get up and go to the gym. I am going to do all these emails before I start the day because I didn't do them as I should have done that time. They've got to be done by this time. I've got all these little bits that now I'm proving to myself that I'm doing and working towards them and making them much more manageable. And I think it's that those, even though they're just little things, but when you don't do the little basics that kind of pave the way of how your day is going to go, which then will affect the way your week goes, which then will affect how the month goes, and all those little things.
Yeah, I think at its core, I think confidence is keeping your promises to yourself.
Yeah.
I think because when you just constantly say, I'll start Monday, or I'll do that task tomorrow, or I'll do, and you just keep procrastinating and putting it off and don't do it, and just keep breaking them promises, it's like your own word to yourself starts to mean very little. And I feel like that's a really dangerous place to be, to the point where it's like, you literally just need to start lowering the bar so low that you actually do start taking action and start to get some evidence like, hey, like I said, I'd do this one tiny little thing and I did it. Great. How can I just do like a tiny bit more than that and then just keep stacking it? Because I think that's we definitely see it for a lot of the women that we've worked with and our clients, is that it's like a huge, like it just feels like repeated failure for years or decades because they've tried so many different diets, and it's like, must be me, must be my body, must be my, like I must be broken. Why do I always fall off at 2 weeks, or why can't I stick to anything? And then just that repeated failure of like, no, I'm going to do it, and then breaking them promises again. And
but it's like you said, creating an environment where you actually can succeed.
Yeah.
It's not setting yourself up to wake up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, exactly,
when you're not going to do it.
And also, like you say, in those situations, you realise why people give up on themselves, because they just feel like they're worthless because they can't do things that to everyone else, particularly if you're scrolling through things like Instagram where everybody is smashing the gym at, everyone's getting up at 3 a.m. having cold showers or whatever, like whatever.
Don't be looking at me.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Then straight away you feel like, God, I can't even lose a pound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, one of the elements of confidence is self-efficacy, which is that believing you can do things. And I think particularly if you've tried and failed many times, all you've got is evidence that you can't. Yeah. So why would you suddenly think, oh, this is going to be different? Failed at everything else I've tried. Yeah,
I think it's that way of going, just because you failed at them doesn't mean that another way you'll fail. You fail because you know that those things that don't work. So if you actually take away or reframe them, the things that don't work means the opposite might. So it's kind of just looking at things.
That's a really good point. Like, how can you flip that and try and find a path out of it, the hopelessness?
Yeah, because you can do inverted thinking. So it's basically like it's easier for us to spot the negatives and the things that we shouldn't do than sometimes the things that we should. Yeah. So, like if you've actually failed at something for a really long time, you've actually got loads of evidence to say, oh, this is what you shouldn't do, or maybe what won't set you up for success. So you can look at it in a really like growth mindset side of things. But then sometimes if you actually wanted to create a plan, sometimes people are like, oh, what's the perfect plan? And it's like, oh, maybe I should go to the gym 5 times a week, or maybe I should do this. And sometimes it's actually better like, what if I wanted to completely like fuck up my health? Like, what are all the things that I should do? I mean, it's like, okay, well, I probably would never exercise. I'd probably never go outside. I probably wouldn't get any sunlight. I probably would do no steps. I probably, would eat takeouts every day. And it's like, okay, we'll just write that whole list down. It's like the opposite is probably a pretty good framework of what you should do.
Even if it's the start.
Yeah.
Even if it's the start, yeah.
And I think also somebody that's repeatedly failed shows that they're repeatedly willing to try, right? They're still trying.
The grit.
Even though, that's one thing. You're not just boxed up and going, oh, God, I can't. You still got up after failed and then did it again. So it has. You're right. It hasn't worked, but the key things driving you were still there, relentlessly, and particularly each time it chips away of you, you still got up and showed up. Yeah. So
I think that's what does make your health so much more difficult to ignore, though. So like, I always think about this as like different parts of your health could be lots of different skills to an extent. But if you were to start playing basketball or go swimming, and say you give it a good attempt, you go 10 times, 20 times, maybe you go for 4 months, 6 months straight, and you just like, I really don't like this. Like, I'm not into it. You can kind of just quit, and that's the end of you swimming, or that's the end of you playing basketball. But if you don't get to do that for diet, you go on a quote unquote different strategy of a diet, but but then you're on a diet. A diet is just the foods that you habitually eat, so you're on that to the day you die, so you don't necessarily get to quit. And I think that's what makes it so difficult for people, is that, like, yeah, right, maybe you quit that strategy, but you've just defaulted back to some other, like, behaviors that you've got around food, you know, whatever that other default is. And that's why I really do believe, like, getting your health in a place where it's, like, manageable and easy to stay on top of, and your nutrition is, like, one of the best return on investments you can make, not from a financial aspect of, like, paying a coach or anything, but just from actually, like, spending the time to learn the skills and strategies, because it's such a blueprint for life.
Absolutely. You can't do anything without it. Literally nothing.
Yeah. I loved what you said earlier, though, about your health actually is the foundation of everything. And if you are struggling in any other area, bring it back to, like, what is the impact on your health? Goes both ways. So if your health isn't where it needs to be, what's the impact in all the other areas of your life?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to show up your best at work, for your family, all of these things, if you're not feeling as good as you could do.
And I think it's the levels of your health, like having, like, healthy mindset, having healthy sleep, having, you know, these practices that are actually really core to just the basic functionality of you as a human. So I think that those things, when they're off, so if you're stressed out, you're not sleeping as well, or you're running around doing too much work, so to speak, then you're not getting that rest in, and then you're making poor choices in terms of your diet and stuff like that, and then you just put yourself under pressure constantly.
Actually, I did want to ask about that, because I know as a GP you see all sorts of everything. Would you say there are common themes of things that people are struggling with their health?
Yeah. Well, we're in medical school, we get taught common things are common, basically. So the main things that you see are often repeated things. I think in GP practice, I suppose, me being a female GP, see lots of women's health issues and things like that. And because of my background in aesthetics, and I've got a special interest in acne, see a lot of people with a variety of skin problems. But I suppose the main recurring themes as well, particularly now that fortunately we speak way more about it on things like social media, is mental health problems. And I think anything, I suppose, in my line of work, from depression, anxiety, and then leaning more over into the aesthetics angle, which there's definitely a link in things like body dysmorphia and eating disorders and stuff like that, which again, in our practice generally, it's not something that we kind of like screen for because they're quite hard to do. But you know, there's a lot of common themes in that are repeated in both lines of my work.
And would you say that's something that you're seeing more of, or is it just because you feel that's your
you're more
specialism?
Open to it. I think now things that I think as, again, to do my aesthetics practice initially when I started doing it all those years ago as a sideline, it's like, go on, James, give us 3 areas of Botox and a lip filler, and then they just give me a shout when they want it doing again, right? But when you're actually now seen more as a practitioner doing it, offering services, you tend to get people who are like, what do I need to change about my face? And that's the first thing I'm like, or what do I need doing? I'm like, no one needs anything doing.
Because they're asking you.
Asking me.
Okay.
And that's where I go into all my, like, look, none of us need this stuff doing. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a wrinkle. But actually, me, you know, getting rid of my wrinkles or having Botox all these years improves my confidence, and that's why I'm doing it. But actually, if I didn't do it, it's not the end of the world, right? It's not, you need something doing. Mm-hmm. And I suppose I might vary a bit into some practitioners of that, because it's probably the worst salesperson.
It's not the best business model.
No, it's not. But in turn, it actually is, because it means that what you're doing is you're showing people the value of the small tweaks and things that you can have and the reasons behind why you're doing them. Otherwise, it becomes chasing this relentless thing that you don't even, again, know why you're doing stuff, because you didn't see a problem in the first place, but there clearly is a problem, as that's why you're here and the way you're thinking about yourself. So, but if you can't tell them what it is, and we're just going to do aimless injections, what we do. So yeah, I don't mean that in the sense that, yeah, as practitioners in aesthetics, we do see patients and we do have skills to analyse somebody's face, but the way, because it's a beauty thing, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I can tell you what safely I don't want you to do, but if you certainly, you know, want to have, like, if you're happy having thinner lips, I'm not going to tell you need to make them bigger, but I can tell you ways they might make you look younger by having more hydrated lips or more contoured lips. That is something that younger people have compared to people that are that bit older. So there's just different ways of looking at things, and it's just, I think as well, from our side of being practitioners, you know, maintaining that duty of care to the patient, and also knowing that the way we see things is all different. Like, people, I always say to patients, like, a good result for someone's a bad result for someone else. Like, somebody might, if I do anti-wrinkling injections on someone who I know is an actress, which I do loads of them, they need to keep being able to move their face. They need to keep having some movement. But they want to look the best they can. Whereas some other people, having a bit of movement is not what they want at all. They want the opposite. So it's kind of having these conversations of being like, there isn't a set plan here, the set template of this is a perfect face. So you come to me and I'll go, because I'm not perfect, far from it. So how, what? It's just having those conversations in a kind way that you're kind of teasing out the expectations of people, what they're wanting, and then going from there.
Are you seeing that, like, on the aesthetic side of things, that it's starting to become a trend with it being younger and younger, maybe women or people just in general wanting to get it done?
I don't know really. I think I tend to have maybe a younger demographic of patients, but not drastically young now. I know there's been loads of things in the press recently about like girls who are 10 years old putting retinol on the face and all kinds of like cosmeceutical products and anti-aging the skin when they're still babies essentially. So I think it's through the powers of social media and things on TikTok and stuff like that, and they're not necessarily bad things. It's just like you're aware of these things a lot younger.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I didn't even have a phone, never mind social media. So you wouldn't even know what these things are. So I think that element, but I don't know. I think I've consistently kind of see the same sort of demographic of patients. It hasn't sort of broadly changed over the years.
Do you think like there becomes like a negative to it in a sense of like, you've got social media, you've got TikTok has an inbuilt filter now, like just on the camera. So it's like you automatically have a filter on unless you go into the settings and turn it off.
Oh, do you? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Then you've got like, Instagram's a lot of the filters on there. And there's like a lot of people that I follow that now they only ever do stories with a filter. Like I don't think the last time I've ever seen them is without a filter. And then if on top of that, if there's, maybe more cosmetic treatments happen off the back of it, which I'm not against in any, like I genuinely just like people do you. And I'm if you're happy, like I'm happy as long as it's not hurting anyone. I think that's kind of always been my sort of take on it. But does there become ever like a negative feedback loop of maybe some people going down like the aesthetic route or doing things like Botox? Because we're talking about like health and what you put in your body and whatever else. I know there's been, at least I've seen on social media over the past couple of years, there's been a massive sort of backtake in terms of people getting breast augmentation taken out because it starts to have negative effects on their bodies. And like, is there anything around that's happened with like Botox or?
Not so much. I think one thing that I think is a good thing trend-wise is these ideas of like sort of some patient comes to me and be like, can you do like a Kim Kardashian package? Or that some people on Instagram would do, which basically is like cheekbones, jawline filler, chin, nose stuff, all for like some mad cheap price. And I'd be like, no, like it's not. But again, that goes on to your principle. People just coming to me going, can you make me like this? And again, that's why. So I'm sort of saying, well, no, like, because all of these things independently don't suit everybody, independently need to be taken, given the significance that they make to your face. So like you don't just do a package of them all just for a discount price just because you want to look like Kim Kardashian. It's not going to happen. But
and also, why do you want to look like Kim Kardashian? Because getting to the root of that is really where the conversation
is absolutely that's what I mean when people say what do I need doing to my face. It's the same kind of thing. And then the other one is definitely when I first started doing aesthetics, I'm lucky enough to have some really close friends who are like gorgeous influencer girls, so I always had them on my page and been treating them for years. And people would come to me and go, Jane, can you do lips like India? Can you do things like Holly? And I'm like, yeah, I get it. My friends, they're on my page all over it. They're gorgeous. So I understand why they'd be making that link. But these days, it tends to be more like, can you make me look like this Hollywood filter? Or can you make me look like whatever?
Right. Oh, really? Yeah. So it's not a person. It's
what
like
the filter makes them look like.
You're joking me?
No.
Wow.
And I'm like, again, no, I can't do that. So yeah, it's more that idea of somebody like wanting to emulate someone or having a role, not necessarily a role model, but being like, I think India's gorgeous. I like her lips. Can you make mine like that, Jane? It's a conversation going, well, your lips like that, so potentially a little bit. And it's the starting point of the conversation, just because it's insight into what that person likes. It's probably the same as you going, I want to get shredded like such a person, or I want to do this like such a person. And in that, I think if it's becoming like something that is the expectation are completely unrealistic, then obviously that conversation has to be kind of, look into the deeper reasons behind it. But yeah, more these days it's like, you know, the ones on Instagram where they're like almost like cartoon features.
Yeah.
So where they like pull the nose in and then make the massive lips.
Yeah, and your eyes bigger and all that stuff.
All that, yeah.
So with that, do you think the reason why it's become such a thing on filters and then people asking for it is it's kind of seen as that's actually now what a normal face looks like? So I need to fit in and look normal. And then that perception of what's normal has shifted.
Yeah, I don't know really, Stacey, actually. I think a lot of it maybe is trends. Like if everyone and all your mates are using filters in the Instagram story and it's something that you're just conditioned to do, I think it maybe is more of that than actually think that people... you know you've got a filter on it. Like, so it's not, I don't know, because some of them are that bizarre.
Yeah, they are.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know it's...
Yeah. Because I'm just thinking about, you know, when you have a group of mates, when you're like a teenager and you all buy the same kind of jeans and you all buy the same kind of necklaces. And then you're like, oh, we've got our little tribe and like, this is what defines us. We all like the same thing and we all look similar. And it's like them versus us in terms of psychology, like we're the in-group. Is it partly a driver of that, like wanting to be in the in-group, and if I look like them, then I'll be more popular? Or
I reckon there probably definitely is. But I think from our side, again, going back to the fact we're medical practitioners, it's tricky, isn't it? Because look, there's trends in everything. So at the moment, like there's a lot of more trends into sort of more natural things, moving away from fillers. Not necessarily natural things, but more skin treatments, these things called polynucleotides that stimulate your skin to regenerate themselves, essentially. So that is moving away from actually using things that I've kind of now blurred into, you know, at one point just highlighting your jawline, highlight your cheekbones, and now blurred into Kim Kardashian packages. So I think it just depends. I think you've got to look at each person as an individual and look at the reasons behind it. And I think it's better just to, I suppose, have consultation with people. And I often offer like a cooling off period where I'm like, have a chat with me, see what you think, and then go away and come back and we'll talk about it then, rather than like in the heat of the moment, particularly if people are like flitting from idea to idea. Like the classic thing is, I'll go, oh no, well I don't really think, if you wanted to do that with your nose, you better like, fillers can't really achieve that. So, or maybe this is the possible effect of that. Go away and have a think about it. And sort of do that point of like reference where you're not just on the heat of a moment.
how permanent are like fillers and Botox?
Depends. Botox lasts 3 to 6 months. So that basically Botox is a neurotoxin that relaxes muscles. So you inject that, it basically blocks the message between the nerve and the muscle, so the synapse. It sits in these acetylcholine receptors. So it basically stops that message going through, and that gradually wears off between 3 to 6 months. And the length of the treatment will depend on how strong your muscles are and how much you put in. Fillers, on the other hand, are like clear gels made out of hyaluronic acid. So that's, you're all familiar with, probably it's in the skin, and it's part of like the collagen and elastin framework. So we add fillers to add or replace volume in your skin. So they last really from the softer fillers 6 to 12 months, and then the ones that are more what you call tightly cross-linked, so basically give more structure. Anything, well, they almost say 18 months, but I haven't had my fillers done for about 3 years. So
oh, wow.
That's a long time, yeah.
So it is quite a big decision if you don't like it.
Exactly, yeah. And you can, the main amazing thing is about hyaluronic acid fillers is you can dissolve them. And that's more from a safety point. I'd never encourage anybody to have a filler with a view to, oh, I'll change mine next week, we'll just dissolve it. Definitely not. I mean, I'm not going to encourage that, but like they do say, if I don't like it, I'm like, no, we're not, this is just again another red flag.
Yeah.
No. But you can. So the worst thing that happens with a filler is it can end up blocking a blood vessel, because the gels that are injected with a direct needle most of the time, you can use cannulas, but the risk is more with the direct needle. And if that blocks a blood vessel that's supplying, your tissues that need oxygenated blood, you can have what's called a vascular occlusion. And Hyalase is an enzyme that breaks down the hyaluronic acid. So if that happened, you can dissolve it.
Okay, but it's not like you would just go back and have it swapped for a different style.
No. Exactly. And also, because the thing is, these things, or the good quality products anyway, integrate into your own tissues. Mm-hmm. So like, they kind of become part of you. It's not that easy just to reverse it.
And do you think once somebody starts, they feel like almost a bit of fear to stop, because this has now become this thing that helps them feel great and gives them confidence?
I think definitely with anti-wrinkle injections, they definitely work. And the thing is, when they're done right, they really do increase your confidence. I certainly believe that, and that's from me personally and professionally. But I mean, I think it depends on the person, because I think some people really like love it, and other people are, like, when they understand it, know that you can pick it up and put it down. You'll get better results if you keep doing it. We don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say it improves your confidence, how did it specifically improve your confidence?
God, I'm 40 now, so God knows what I look like if I didn't have it. Not that being 40 is over, but the way I've just stopped, it just stopped the lines and wrinkles forming that I felt that knocked my confidence. Mm-hmm. So by not having them, I feel better about it. It's just, there's nothing deeper to it than that. I think it's just more that I feel fortunate enough that you can do these things and I'm trained in it. And I think having it does make me feel better about the way that I look, and then that makes me feel better about the way I feel. Yeah. But there isn't anything in it that I feel like, I just feel lucky you can do it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Would you say the confidence thing though, is it about like, I don't know, I'm finding I'm getting wrinkles now, and my makeup isn't how it used to sit, and I'm like, I don't know how to do my makeup anymore. Yeah. And it's that like beginner mindset again almost that's making me feel like, this is so annoying. I don't actually have an issue with the fact that I have wrinkles. It's just that I just don't know how to deal with them.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. Like I'm quite, I suppose at heart, quite a tomboy really at heart. Like with a lot of things, work, I was like, you're really glamorous. So I'm like, because I'm doing things that people see me, I'll get my hair blow dried and wear makeup and things like that. But generally, I'm not that overly bothered. Like anyone who knows me, I'm actually over the last couple of years started doing skincare properly. I'd always be like, whatever. Not that I wasn't taking it seriously. I just didn't really mind that much. But I think now having experienced something, and particularly with Botox being a good example, it does work. So that it's not like a subjective thing where you're going to be like, it does work. It stops the muscles working as much, so you don't see the lines as much, and that has the whole effect of how you feel about yourself. Loads of people love it for that reason.
Do you think it's because it takes them back to a time where they felt confident previously?
Well, that's a good question. It definitely hasn't with me. I feel more confident now than I ever have. So I don't. But then that's again what we were talking about before about the person you've evolved into.
Yeah, it's your inner confidence, isn't it? It's not like how your face looks.
I think it just helps in the big thing. If you're feeling better about yourself, then everything can be a bit better because of that. But I don't think it's a good point. That does it take people back? It might do in some people. I think it depends on the person. I never kind of like was one of these girls that was like the prettiest girl or anything like that. So I never sort of like relied on it. So me doing it's a bonus. Yeah. Whereas I think if you maybe was somebody that was, I don't know, a gorgeous girl that then was aging and feeling like they're losing their looks and losing a bit of their identity, then certainly it would definitely help if you feel better about yourself from that point.
Yeah, because I find at the moment my skin is so bad as I've stopped breastfeeding and my hormones are going mad. And I look back at pictures of what it used to look like, and I just want it to be back how it was. And there is that part of me which is just like, I shouldn't want to be back where I was because my life is different, and like all the things that we tell our clients, you're not going to be the same after kids as you were before. But it was so nice. And I can totally get it if that's the same kind of feeling that your clients have.
I imagine actually that's a really good point. I've never really explored. I think more it's, again, a lot of people tend to come for these things for the first time if like an event's happening or something's coming up. Initially that's how they tend to start, like I'm starting a new job, or I'm single again, or I'm like getting married. They tend to be the triggers to come see me. But again, as what we were discussing before, maybe there are underlying things that actually take me back to a place where I was in a better mindset, and that was directly linked to the way that I look.
Because I also feel like that time of my life, I had energy, I felt healthy, I looked like I had energy and I was healthy. Whereas now
you look like that now.
Well, it's all relative, thanks. But maybe that's part of it as well. It's like, does my inside match my outside?
Yeah,
and maybe, as people are aging, they feel like, my inside does not feel like this face. What's this all about? I want to feel like I look like I feel.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick ask. If you are enjoying this podcast, we do ask if you would go and hit that subscribe button, because our goal is to be able to help all of you guys become body smart. And the way we can do that is by getting better guests on, more experts. And the bigger this podcast gets, the more guests we can get on. Every time I hit like another birthday or I get a bit older, like I still just feel like I don't feel any older in my head. And anyone I speak to who's like 45, or 50, like, oh yeah, I still feel 22 in my mind, or 25. You know, like they've got more experiences behind them, but they still feel young at heart.
That's
they're just in a different, the body just looks different. And I've seen plenty of videos of, you know, people in their 70s and their 80s who've still, you know, looked after their health, but they're like, they think it's wild that they're in an 80-year-old body, but they think
it doesn't match.
It doesn't match how they think and feel about themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some of that. What would you say, like, do you have many men? Like, what's the ratio of men to women?
I don't know the exact ratio, but definitely, and all different types of guys.
Yeah.
So there isn't like a set. I think at the start it'd be like, oh, you know, male models or people like that who had to kind of look after themselves, and then got all kinds. I've got roofers, electricians, general. I think it is when you try it and you like it and you have a good experience, then you tend to follow up on it.
Yeah.
And then it tends to be as simple as it is because it works. So, I think it's a sign of the times more recently. It all started just with girls who were probably similar age to me doing it. But definitely as it's evolved, it's not just for women.
Yeah.
And do you think that's the same kind of drivers of either I want to feel like I look like everyone else that I'm seeing around me, or I want to feel like I look like I feel inside?
I think it's actually the patients that I've met, because it is available, and I think maybe it's just the way that I talk about it, that it is something that in the right hands can be done safely and it works and you feel better because of it. They just think that there's, you know, it's such a good thing that you can do, rather than feeling like they have to be doing it or something's happened that they feel it needs to take them to another place. I think, again, everybody's got a different story, but I think now, because it is so mainstream, I don't think people think that deeply about it.
Yeah, I think accessibility is definitely a huge one. And then
I think that's what's encouraged the guys. I think it's around more, and then it's all more obvious. I get asked a lot of times where people are like, as such a person had it, or that's a classic thing, and then, you know, people looking for permission. Yeah. Oh, look, that celebrity's done it, or they've done it, or if they're going to do it, I've done it, or, you know, if my roofer mate's done it, then. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is all that.
It is all that, yeah. But I think that's been a really interesting swing to see over the past 15 years of men not really going to the gym. You know, there was the people that went to the gym were the bodybuilders or the strength trainers, and now over the past 15 sort of odd years, going to the gym is a normal thing now. And for some people, yeah, it's definitely for health, but for a lot of people, it's aesthetics as well, in terms of how we want to look. And I think that's just a lot of people trying to chase youth, isn't it? Or, you know, you can have people now in their 40s and 50s and they probably look as good as 30-year-olds.
Well, I think
50
the thing
years
is,
ago.
though, what is beauty and youth? If you look healthy, you look good. So that's what you're chasing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You want to exude vitality and health and energy and zest for life, which if you look after your health, you will.
It's definitely.
Just to come back to confidence for a second, we've talked about the outside confidence, and then there's the inner confidence that we've talked about. Have you got any tips for someone? Because you've had so many guests on your podcast and heard all their stories. Have you gathered any tips of if somebody really is struggling, what would be the common themes that they could do? I
think there's a few, really. I think a lot of the things that we talk about confidence-wise is, again, things not going to plan or adverse events. And I think when people look back on it, is how hard they were on themselves and how much they kind of beat themselves, blame themselves for things not working out. And then now that things are, and then you've moved on and you've dealt with everything that needed to be put in place to move forward, you're God, I shouldn't have been so hard on myself, and I should have just trusted the process, really. These things that actually things do turn out in the end, hopefully, and most of the time they do. So I think it's that idea of you know, talking to yourself in a harmful way, pressuring yourself, putting yourself down, rather than actually dealing with what's in front of you, trying to quantify it in a manageable way, and then trusting the process of the redirection you're inevitably going to be taking on. Yeah.
So that's the key thing. Really being in the moment and
not getting stuck in it. I think that's the key thing. If you go through, I don't know, a breakup, or you lose your job, or you're setting up a business and it all goes wrong, or just something that you'd invested in and really sort of wanted to go a certain way, and all of a sudden it can't, and there's no way it possibly can. It's that idea of kind of just freeing yourself from it and managing it mentally to sidestep it and move on. rather than getting stuck in it and replaying it and rethinking it
Yeah.
and trying to blame yourself for things you should have done or could have done to make the outcome the opposite.
So it's acceptance as well.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Wow, that's quite a lot of stuff that people need.
Yeah.
Just, deep life lessons here. But yeah, so it all sounds like it's more like that inner talk and how you think about a situation and making sure that you're being in the moment, but also able to know that every moment is going to pass.
And I think the best thing actually about me sort of having the privilege of speaking to so many different people is all of the stories are all so different and all personal to them. The key themes are the way that they've sort of moved forward, the things that the way they've looked at it within the bigger picture and the stuff that they've learned from it. And I think, again, often you're not alone in these things, that like when you're not the only one that these things happen to. So it's not to say, oh, you're not the only one, get on with it. I mean, the opposite of that, these are common things. It's nothing you've done that's made this kind of not work out, or you've failed and not put yourself in the right, I don't know, whatever sort of predicament you need to be in to make it work. It's just that sometimes these things happen, I suppose, and that it's how you deal with it and move forward is what matters.
Having that self-compassion to know that you're not the only one
Yeah.
struggling is huge.
That's easier said than done, though,
Yeah,
right?
of course,
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
we are often our own worst enemies and crucify ourselves in situations like that. So it is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really difficult in that time. Is there anything that you would advise, like when you're going through stuff like that? I mean, it's just difficult. I personally, I struggle with when I have moments like that. You know what I mean? It's like I just internalize a lot of what's going on.
I think one thing I'd say is probably when you're feeling not your best or not yourself, or emotionally, I was supposed to say actually different, like things happening, don't trust the way you feel about yourself at the time or make any major decisions when you feel like that. Just trust that it will pass. And they said this moment will pass where you feel like that, just to kind of give yourself the space to feel it and allow it to kind of encompass you in that moment, but not let it kind of frame the next steps. Just let yourself be in that situation, whatever that may be, and then just trust that you won't feel like that forever.
That's actually really important, because I was reading into the psychology of confidence in preparation for today. And, you said about, it's being able to deal with anything life throws at you. That's what confidence is. It's also being able to deal with whatever emotions life throws at you. Because if you don't let emotions kind of be in your body and you distract yourself, like we're talking earlier.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
It pushes you off on the wrong path, and you start making those decisions which then don't align. Again, you go down this rabbit hole and it's just worse and worse and worse. So if you can allow yourself to feel all your emotions and not be scared of that can also build confidence. Because also, you know what? If I fail, it's going to suck, but I can cope with failure.
Yeah.
I can let it be here for a minute and then move on. Sometimes acting out of fear of failure is the worst thing you can do.
Definitely. And then you just make decisions that aren't really you. They're not going to serve you the best. And it's just kind of, taking the opportunity or moment to kind of let that moment pass, and then just, again, see how you feel in the next step and just take it day by day, I suppose.
Yeah. Which, like you said, is easier said than
done. Yeah.
But things that you can do in the moment, and I think this is a really big thing most of us probably need to work on, is not be on your own in that moment. Because if you are beating yourself up and you are thinking like, oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, so many of us feel like confidence is about like being successful and being able to deal with everything. It doesn't mean dealing with it on your own. Like, you don't have to be an island. You don't have to keep it all inside and feel like telling somebody that you're struggling is a failure as well, because that feels like you're adding to it.
I think it's that idea when people feel like shame about it, or shame not achieving, and that's the biggest barrier to just kind of
to talking to someone.
But often the case is when you start sharing, everyone goes, oh, well, that happened to me. And then you're like, oh, well, how do you deal with it? And then before you know it, you've got a strategy, plan of action, and you've been able to share experiences that both people get something from. So I think that's the worst thing, like you say, Stacey, like locking yourself up with your emotions or trying to bypass them by getting on with the next step of the exit strategy from it. Just kind of like giving yourself a minute to feel that way.
Robbing that person who probably cares about you from being able to just like sit in that with you. You know what I mean? Like, because most of the time, like when I've heard of some friends that are going through some shit, I'm like, why didn't you call me? And they're like, oh, I just didn't want to burden you. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. I'm like you, like, and I get like offended by it to an extent, because I'm like, I wanted them to sit in that, or I wanted to sit in that with them, because talking is it just helps you process like so much. When you talk through a problem. Sometimes just as a byproduct of just talking it with someone and I'm just like listening or just talking a little bit back or being really impartial, like that can be so helpful in just like figuring out like what you need to do. And like you said, not being an island and sitting on your own.
Because you get into your head, like it's so easy to get into your own head and kind of replay things or sort of ruminate on the same thoughts of it. But actually, when you just vocalize it, and also people again can share their similar experiences, but also give you a complete 360 on what you're actually thinking. And then you're like, oh, and then you realize that actually all your thoughts are just compounding the way you feel, but that is only one angle of one person in one situation.
Yeah. And the people who love you can see the strengths in you that are going to help you find the way out of it as well. Whereas in that moment, you can just be so in on yourself and seeing all the dark side. You can't see that good. So that would be a big tip to take away.
Yes,
I think.
definitely.
Confidence is not taking on the world by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the other things that we've talked about today that are really helpful is doing those hard things and proving like you can do hard things to yourself. Do you have any rituals or hobbies or anything where you like put yourself out of your comfort zone on a regular basis?
I suppose I think sort of rituals and things I try and do sort of more related to work is the morning time is good for me to sort of, I used to always be like, get the morning, get out, get to the gym, whereas I don't do that as much now. I tend to get up and have a bit of time to sort of sit up, get showered, get a coffee, and then sort of like anything, sort of plan the day a bit. So I try not to do the night before, but you can't always help it if you got like, I need to do that email, or if you're just like, I'm knackered, I can't do it now. I've got to get ahead of the day. So because particularly my job where you're basically people facing, patient facing all day, I'm not on my phone all the time, and then all these different things are buzzing away and different things happening. What makes me stressed out and anxious is the fear of missing something. And when you're doing things and basically half doing the jobs throughout the day, it can lead to a bit of a backlog, and then the end of the day comes and you're like, oh, I'm not got the energy levels to deal with it properly or prioritise things as I should. So I tend to now use the morning a bit to kind of get on top of those things so that I know everything's boxed off that it should be. I've got a little plan of action, and then we can kick off the day from there. So that tends to be a ritual, so to speak, or just a strategy that I've kind of done that just helps to kind of manage things and just feel more comfortable with the day ahead.
Yeah, get the chaos under control.
It's not even that bad. That's the thing. That's a stupid thing. I'm like, oh God, I've got so many like, no, all you have to do is reply to the email. Simple as that. Yeah. But it's in the back of my mind, like, I can't possibly do that.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm like, all I have to say is yes, I'll be there. Oh, job done. I'm like, that's it.
I actually make my husband open those emails because I'm like, I don't want to know. I hate it.
Yeah.
I know, Jamie, you've got a few things that you like to do, like do hard things.
Oh, I call that voice in your head that doesn't want you to do things just like you're in a bitch. So just like, and I see it as almost like, and whether this is just my mentality, so just feel free to call me crazy. If I ever have things like, especially when it comes around workouts, you know, like I have a workout, and let's say I'm doing split squats, or I'm doing an exercise that I don't really like. I know it hurts. If I start getting like a weakness of like, oh, when you skip that today, you're tired, you know, I end up doing like an extra set. Like I almost punish myself for having a weak thought, and whether that's a bit fucked up or not, like who knows, but like that's
why you dread it, because you know you're going to make yourself do it 10 times worse rather than just get it over.
Yeah, instead of just,
like, what's that, lower the bar so that it's not as hard.
Yeah, it's like higher the bar so it's even harder, and so like there's that side of it, but like I do like to you know, I think just like physically doing hard things like even allows me to like mentally do hard things, and especially like hard physical exercise, just like any overwhelm or anxiety or any sort of feelings I have around anything that I'm dealing with work-wise, or stress is like super high. If I went and done like a horrendous leg workout for like 75 minutes and then I'd done like a flipping cold shower or something that morning, like nothing can bother me. I'm like I can feel like I'm just chill. I'm like, oh yeah, like it's like the problems are there and they just don't bother me. But if I haven't sometimes exercise that difficult, it's
almost like setting the tone for the day, like you said, isn't it? It's just having a reset of who you are, and I can deal with shit. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, and there's just like loads of situations where like I'm doing stuff in work or things get really challenging, or growing a business is really challenging, and when I get to these certain points, I'm just like, oh, I'm like, it's supposed to be hard. Like
Yeah.
if it was easy, everyone would do
doing it.
And
Yeah.
like that isn't the case. It's like when people go like, oh, I want to have a flat stomach, or I want to have a six pack. And it's like, why is it so hard? And it's like, it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like, if it was easy to have a six pack, everyone would have a six pack. And yes, there are some like genetic outliers and yada, 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 but like that isn't the case enough. So for me, it's almost like a part of my identity to an extent of like to regularly do hard things with my body. So when mentally hard things happen, I can almost like control my emotions to an extent to be like, and be more prepared for it. So yeah, they're kind of my mantras around a lot of things and doing difficult things and trying to do. I got this from like Michael Easter's book, which is The Comfort Crisis. It's really good, and he says about doing like one thing each year that's like, it's so hard that you don't actually know you can do it. So I think for him, he like runs around this like mountain, and he's like, he does it like once all the time, and he's like, could I do it twice? He's like, yeah, I could do it twice. He's like, could you do it 3 times? And he's like that's it. But could you do it 4? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, so he tried to do that for, you know, in one thing, and it took him like, you know, a stupid amount of time. And I think the 3rd lap for him was like hell. But then when he got to the 4th lap, it actually got easier because he realized he wasn't going to quit. And you know, I've been trying to do some things like that, but I'm not going to share it because that's kind of the point. But I did one of those things last year, and like the dopamine high I had for like a week afterwards was insane. I just I cut all my feet up and I was in like a load of pain and stuff, but but it was I just didn't think I was going to be able to do this thing that I'd done next to no training for and did. So it was just like you were on this massive high, and I think it's just like I expect bad things and hard things are going to happen in the future, and I almost feel like this is like your armor to preparing you for
and you surprise yourself, don't you, with what you can actually do when you sort of remove the chaos a bit and the noise in the background to focus on one thing. Like I know if I don't get myself that little bit of organisation in the morning done, I'm a bit distracted the rest of the day, whereas when I'm free of it, I love the day, I love my clinic, I love that things are a bit easier. And it's like even with exercise now, I think if I don't do that little bit when I'm in the gym, I'm thinking about it. Whereas the point of me going in the gym is to free my mind of the stress. So if I go in there to when I'm supposed to be concentrating on the inner bitch making me do double the work, I'm like, oh God, I've not sent that email. So it's kind of just looking at how you manage things that work for you. So that when I do go to the gym, I've kind of earned that declutter in my brain to actually push myself really hard and not just constantly feeling like I've got to do list burning away somewhere.
See, I have that, but the opposite way around. So I exercise first thing in the morning 90% of the time because my mind isn't cluttered, and I feel like I have this never-ending to-do list. So it's like because it's never-ending.
I do as well, but I've got to take a tip of the iceberg off every day.
Yeah. But I end up thinking about work when I work out in the middle of the day versus in the morning. It's like a reset. So then when I do the workout, it's kind of like it's like a bit of me time. That's how I see it. So it's just like that time, wake up, get the workout in. But I think that's the whole point, is that like what works for one person doesn't work for another, and it is about finding what works for you and your specific needs.
Definitely.
So when it comes to confidence, I think we've covered pretty much everything there is to discuss with confidence, which is amazing. I did want to ask a few more questions though about like the other subjects that we've touched on, because you've talked about mental health quite a bit, and that's something that you kind of specialise in your GP practice. Is that right?
I think we all do, because the nature of how common it is and how it's not just, I think, like a standalone thing now. I think it's often entwined in many things. So, for example, people who've got chronic illnesses, chronic pain, it's not unusual. It's actually common for them to have elements of mental health problems, particularly things like depression and anxiety. So I think that it's kind of now intertwined in many things rather than just a standalone problem as well.
Which makes sense, because we're not like two different people.
Yeah,
we are one being.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, whatever you're doing with your brain affects your body and vice versa. So are there any common themes where you feel like there's been an exponential increase in mental health around certain themes or around certain challenges people are facing? And would you have any advice for those people?
I suppose this is more from the aesthetic side of it. I think it's just pressures of like, comparison cultures through social media, maybe the way people feel about themselves, what they should be looking like, what they should be doing, what their day should comprise of. And I think, look, we all use social media. I have a love-hate relationship with it. It's amazing things it can do, but it's only natural sometimes when you're constantly scrolling that you feel like that, and that can sometimes be the catalyst to you feeling deeper, more negative or intrusive thoughts even about yourself. So I think that side, and I see it more on that side, like always trying to strive to basically not feeling contentment in themselves and always trying to achieve the next thing because there's something in front of you that always makes you feel that way, or always feels that unsettledness or uncertainty about your own perception about yourself, because something's always been thrown to you going, oh, you should be going on this holiday, you should have this amount of money, you should have this lip filler, you should have this done. There's always something.
And on the flip side of that, there's like this culture of looking amazing, being super fit, doing all the things. And then there's also, at the same time, this exponential growth in people with poor health and obesity.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see that those two can coexist, and like what's going on?
And I think, again, it's probably sadly like a sign of the times. And I think these sort of chronic health problems, again, going back to the start of our conversation about embarrassing bodies, encouraging people to make the starting tiny points of improving their health. So just get that one appointment in, and then we can take it from there, essentially. It's those things that, you know, it's all well and good, you know, saying eat 5 fruit and veg a day, stuff like that, but some people can't afford that, and it's sometimes it's, you know, these things kind of become bigger problems. So I think as they become bigger problems, like, you know, the diet and exercise and accessibility to all these things, as we know, are the core things to everything in terms of your health. So
I know you're big on personal responsibility and people take it, and so am I, but a lot of what you just said feels more like it's more environmental, you know what I mean? And to an extent. So it's like, I think some people can, you know, you're going to get those odd sort of like unicorns that can just strip it back and take personal accountability and responsibility, think a bit different, take action. And I'm all for that. Like, I definitely think that's the case, but there's definitely a part of like your environment.
Yeah, totally.
And, you know, the people you hang around with, the people you follow on social media, the accessibility to movement, exercise, gyms, whether your parents are, you know, there's all these different things that play a huge role as well. So I mean, it's not a small problem to solve by no means.
No, I think it's first of all acknowledging there's layers to all of this stuff, and they all affect people differently. I think it's just about prioritising things, like we said at the beginning, about your health is a core to everything, and there are little small changes that you can make that basically the small changes to do with your habits, right? So I think it's more looking at what habits you can put in place. Just little things like, I'm a big advocate now of just walking. I never used to walk anywhere. I'd be doing all these crazy stuff with my to-do list, but then getting cabs and taxis and everything everywhere. Where if I'd just actually done one task, there's to walk an hour to and back. And I've just achieved everything in one go. But it's these little things that there are small things that you can do. Yeah. And a lot of sort of chronic health problems are maybe just, you know, the added effects of combined bad habits. And the truth is, habits are hard to break, and particularly when the things related to smoking and overeating or eating the wrong things, or, you know, alcohol and many things. So I think when things are bad or kind of really becoming negative and building on the effects on your health, that can actually sometimes be the good point to make that switch. These little habits that have become massive can be undone. It's just going to take time and commitment to the cause, almost, that the hard to break the habits, because it is hard.
And also to trust the process, like you talked about earlier, because if you haven't ever had that evidence that these little habits will make a difference, why at this point in your life are you suddenly going to start doing it?
Exactly, I think. And that's why, again, to your point, Jamie, it's really hard, like the way just things are environmentally. I suppose it's all well and good for me to say, well, you know, go to the gym, eat this food. But if they've got, like, you know, a massive family of kids and their own benefits or something like that, they can't find a job or anything like that, it's really hard to do any of those things. And I'd understand why someone would be depressed with that pressure on them, and then they've got not only them but a whole family to look after. It's really difficult. I don't know what the answer is, but we can just have compassion in that situation.
I just think it's like a fine line to walk, because like there's the side of it of you do want to have compassion for people's situations and time. Like, you know, not everyone has 24 hours in a day, even though everyone does have 24 hours a day. That isn't the case because of responsibilities and then everything else that we just mentioned. You do want to have compassion for that, but then the same breath of the personal responsibility side of things is that no one is coming to save these people, unfortunately. You cannot expect the government to come and like just save you or some millionaire or billionaire to just pluck things out. So like if you are aware of that, the only real answer that you have is to take some sort of responsibility and like however low that bar is, start, because like the whole thing we say to our clients is if you get 1% better every day, you get 37 times better in a year. And even if you've got like really little disposable income and you've got really little time, if you just start making incremental small changes, at least over the next couple of years and even like a decade, things will wildly change, even in the, you know, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, walking more, exercising, like a lot of it can be done for free. If you've got a mobile or you're listening to this, you can take some sort of action.
And also, when you start taking that action, that's one of the nicest things about GP work, when you sort of have chats with patients where you're like, well, you've got type 2 diabetes, or you are in that obesity bracket, or look, you've got this chronic cough, you don't have an infection, you've got COPD caused by smoking or whatever. Well, you kind of have those difficult conversations, but then people start making these small incremental changes, and you follow them up and see them putting into place. Like, look how much weight I've lost, look, I think all this, the joy they get of that, and the sense of achievement, and actually doing small things because of, their hand was forced, essentially, because it's a bigger problem now. It's actually affecting their health on a way that, it's not only their health, it's going to affect their lifespan, how long they're going to live for. So I agree with you, Jamie. I think it's just that, and I'm all for, like, it's what I'm like, I want to have this life. You've got to work hard and you've got to make things happen and all that. But I just think it is that thing that of just sometimes with the way making these healthy choices aren't always equally accessible to everyone. But we know that, and there are things you can do for free, like you say.
Yeah, if you could, when you have someone come into your clinic, if you could give them like 3 top tips of how to start tackling their health, what would you say?
I'd say, I suppose, it's like breaking it down into manageable chunks, not going right. So if somebody said to me, okay, you're in this bracket of obesity, how much weight do I need to lose not to be obese? That's a massive feat. It could be anything to anyone, wouldn't it? But it's gradual steps to start chipping away the weight off and putting in habits that are going to keep it off. So those things, it's looking at the bigger picture. I suppose the other thing I'd say as well is to look at the barriers that stop you doing it. What is making you not exercise? What is making you order McDonald's every day? What is making you do that? And then if it's like a lot of the things are because people don't have much self-worth, they don't value themselves, there's a lot of things that they're deeply unhappy, all those things. So I think it's kind of identifying them, and obviously this is not going to be fixed overnight, but looking at things more as a work in progress, and also looking at ways that you can kind of like see how well you're doing as well, putting things in manageable ways, because the beauty of that is you're seeing your progress all the time, rather than just having this goal that's so far away that it's going to be so easy just to revert back to your previous sort of self-beliefs and health habits.
Yeah, and that builds that confidence, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you're actually looking back and going, hey,
you can do it. Yeah,
I love that.
Sorry to interrupt. If you are enjoying this podcast, we would ask you to go and hit the subscribe or the follow button, as we are on a mission to grow this podcast to be as big as it can be and get some amazing guests on here to give you guys even more value.
If you could like wave your magic wand and have all the money that you wanted in the health service, what would you want to be able to give?
Oh gosh, I think there's so many pockets of everything. I mean, I think when the National Health Service works amazingly for like really acute things like in A&E and things like urgent care most of the time. It's amazing because it's there and then. I think to be honest, a lot of stuff related to chronic illness is the things that cause patients not only so much sort of ill health physically, and again, like I say, on the how long they're going to live for and how happy and active their life's going to be, but also it goes hand in hand with the mental health like I described before. So I suppose looking at these long-term problems, and they are the things potentially that are draining the funds, because the things that last a long time and need a lot of support and resources sort of per person, not only the resources of medication but also the support to help get them better and keep them better. So I'd say the sort of chronic illnesses all related to cardiovascular things, so that would link into is sort of smoking cessation services, everything to obesity, all of those things, and they link directly to the mental health aspects of it.
It's all very
so it's not the glamorous side of it, but it's the side that is where the vast amount of patients.
I just don't think you can have a healthy mind without a healthy body. I just don't think I think it's, and vice versa. You can't have healthy body, healthy mind, healthy body. Like, you need to have both in order to, it's like it's like songs about it, like living your best life, but like living your best life would be to have a as long as a lifespan as you can while having as great of a health span as you can, so without any sort of any sort of disease. And if a lot of people are playing compounding games where they're not looking after their health, physical or mental, because you can just your mental health not being in a great place will just start to affect your physical health, with chronic stress and everything else. But it's something that shouldn't be ignored. For anyone who's listening, for like personal responsibility, but also I guess.
And there are when you start adding up all these small steps, you realise that the end goal isn't too far away. That's the thing. It's that initial first step that's the hardest. And again, with a lot of things, you'd be surprised. A lot of people do know what they need to be doing. It's just they feel shameful that they haven't, and they maybe got themselves in this situation. And often the way that they've ended up there is like multifactorial. Like we said, many things have added up, and it's not happened overnight. As it's happened over a long time. That's put in place these habits that have led to these sort of bad choices, that have led to poor health behaviours, that has led to health conditions. So I think it's just being like, look, don't be too hard on yourself of why you've got there, but let's be realistic about staying there. Staying in that situation is going to be way worse than actually making the change.
Yeah, you made a good point there about like getting started is the hardest bit, because it's also a very small amount of time compared to the benefits you would get.
Yeah.
Like how many years of benefit will you get if you can just grab the bull by the horns and start making some changes?
And even little things, like if you look, that idea of doing community things, like you were saying, going on walks with the people like around you, like you then sort of like engaging again with people. You can easily become socially isolated with these things. You're doing something that's healthy, doing something that's free, and then before you know it, you've walked for an hour on a Saturday with people down the road, and you've forged relationships as well. So the little things that take a bit of effort and they're totally out your comfort zone, but have a massive impact long term.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have got one more question for you. Knowledge is power. Knowing everything that you know now, what do you do to take care of your health, mental and physical?
I think, got this place. I think, what do I do? I think it's looking at what I need to be doing to sort of first of all make myself happy, make myself healthy, and to be able to achieve the things I need to achieve. So I think the key things that I've definitely learned over time that are really important for me personally is getting enough sleep. That's one that's often underestimated but really important. I like just getting enough sleep ties into having a good routine. So now that I tend to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. And then that is just something that makes just life a bit easier. Yeah. So you naturally wake up, sometimes annoying no matter what, like 6:30 at the latest, like bang away. But those things that mean that you've got a set routine in what you're doing, and then that allows the other things like good habits to be put in place. And I've got more time to think about what I'm eating, more time to think about, I'm only having like one coffee a day, and then that's it. Like, that's my first one today, so I'm at my dad's house. So it's literally like you're doing things with more thought behind them. And that's because then you're creating habits and like a little routine that you're set up for the day. So I think it's more those things. Sleep's really important for me, and getting exercise in. But I suppose I've changed the exercise I was doing. I think in the past I was always like, but like what you were saying, Jamie, the harder I go, the sweatier I get, the more pain I'm in the next day, the better that was. Whereas I think that maybe led me to get in, particularly during that sort of burnout phase, things like, adrenal fatigue, like chronic stress on the body, physical, mental. My nervous system was probably just in overdrive. So doing lots of Barry's, or not to use them specifically, but HIIT workouts didn't really help me. Yep. I enjoy doing them. I max now do 1 or 2 of them a week, and then the rest of the time do things like Pilates, or I'm not a big fan of yoga just because I find it hard to kind of sort of switch off of that, but definitely Pilates. Things like Reformer is challenging to me, so doing stuff like that, that gives me a routine. And because it's again a bit similar to my job, they're all different things in the mix. I'm not getting bored of them, and I'm just learning, getting a little bit better, bit by bit. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
So, good sleep.
Good sleep. I say that's number one, I reckon.
Yeah, and going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time is great.
There's the basic things, the simple things that everyone says.
The basics that work, aren't they? And that helps your circadian rhythm, and a consistent exercise.
And I think with the sleep thing, that helps me manage my weight better as well. And also the foods that I'm eating, because I'm being tired, I suppose it's... For many people, you just eat more. I do. If I'm tired, I eat way more.
Especially if you're traveling. If you're ever tired and you're traveling,
forget it. Yeah.
That's why airports have so many restaurants.
Yeah.
It's just like, give us the food.
If you've got time to kill her, we'll do breakfast, lunch and dinner in one sitting.
With a beer, obviously, because we're at the airport.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, if anybody wants to find your podcast, where can they find you?
On all major platforms. So it's called The Confidence Clinics on Spotify, on Apple. All the links for it through my Instagram. So Dr Jane Leonard is my Instagram name. That's it. And it's got its own Instagram itself, actually, which is called The Confidence Clinic Podcast. So yeah, you can find both of them.
Fabulous. Yeah. Thank you so much for fitting us into your very hectic schedule.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing to talk to you.
It's been great. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Jane about all things confidence, body image, then you are going to love episode number 67, where Jamie and I are discussing the impact of filters, artificial intelligence, social media on confidence, and what you can do about it.